Hello, Tom Barnett here again with another story behind the illustration. This one recounting a drawing that basically sailed through our collaborative process, which I'll take this opportunity to explain. This is a screenshot of a Miro board. That's M-I-R-O, Miro. You may have heard their commercials lately on a podcast or two. They're really quite useful. A Miro board is something we use a lot at Throughline to facilitate asynchronous collaboration, meaning it's an online workspace where individuals can come and go at their leisure to engage, evaluate, alter materials, here being our book's illustrations. Now I'm giving you a pretty broad, drawn back shot here to give you a sense of the overall process. All those little images there, not really the point of this demonstration. Naturally, the process begins with me writing a segment and in particular naming it. As a general rule, the title and the image have to work together because they literally appear together on the same page. At a minimum, they can't clash because sometimes, as in the case of this one, the imagery came from a line buried deep in the segment, meaning nowhere near the front. So having written the segment, I would share it naturally with Jim and Sarah Nuttall, both of whom would generate their first cuts. On this Miro board, Jim put his first cuts here in this cluster, and then Sarah placed hers just off to the side so we could compare them visually with ease. Out of that combined workspace, we'd settle on an image approach for each segment, and then Jim would generate and place those images over here, thus keeping all the original stuff and just adding more iterations to the workspace. Further discussions and iterations got us to a final version, which we clustered even more off to the left there. This process of going from right to left, so to speak, it unfolded over months, maybe 9 or 10 in all. We naturally developed a legend for the comments and feedback in general so we could get a sense as to what people were implying with their comments. Basically, that's it for sure, love it, versus we're on the right track, looks good, versus keep pushing, needs refinement, versus ditch it and let's start over and try something different. We had plenty of all four responses. We also, as I noted earlier, took Jim's final renderings and subjected them to a red team review involving two senior graphics people at Throughline, Myrta Dodens and Andy Martin. They ended up blessing about half of the images and they quibbled with the other half. In the latter, they gave us clear suggestions as to fixes. If you look really closely, you see little pink stick-em notes, and those were the ideas they gave us to clean up or exploit some little part of the picture that we hadn't gotten thoroughly worked over. That process of the red team, it was really fun for me because we basically had 10 eyes really working every square inch. And we had these fascinating debates as to, what we were getting across, what was easily understood, what we needed to clarify. And it just made us feel that much more confident about the material. So why was this one so easy? Again, we always tried to link up the title with the drawing because they appeared on the same page. So if you say the word rainbow in the title, you better have a rainbow in the drawing, right? Well, that wasn't a hard and fast rule. Sometimes the titles were just too hard to capture. And this was one of those times. Sarah Nuttall took a crack at portraying the title and came up with this image. Ice cream being scooped out of the world container, put in this American dish. Or is that a U.S. military helmet upside down? Anyway, you get the idea. Comfort food squished into an exclusively American container. It sort of works, but it's also a bit trivial for an image regarding the subject at hand, U.S. military planning. So we abandoned this line of argument, this approach, trying to capture the title, and we went and found something else. So instead of trying to capture the title directly, Jim Nuttall decided to glom onto a single line buried in the text. And it's a segment talking about how the Pentagon knew how to buy a big war force, but the post-Cold War demand signal was full of small wars and stability operations short of war, such that the Pentagon was guilty of buying one type of force while operating another. Is that an awkward dynamic? Sure as hell is. And here's the line. It was like using a hammer to sink screws. So that's what Jim ran with. Hammer, nails, screws, bolts. Jim's inventiveness found expression here, mostly in the backdrop, which suggests a globe and what strikes me as North Africa, but maybe it's the Levant. The key here is that the various nails and screws and bolts suggest a heterogeneous strategic environment that the U.S. military is choosing to address in each instance with its big old Leviathan hammer. So what happens? Nails get bent, screws go in hard, bolts are beat down all nasty like. It's not a pretty picture by design. But for me, it was a slick capture of a concept that really captured the segment's underlying message. One size does not fit all. Jim's third iteration got in some subtle points. It's not just a regular hammer, it's a sledgehammer. And notice how the inappropriate targets, the screw, the bolt, when they're hit, they clearly, there's damaging of the underlying surface. And that gets us to the final book version, where the speed and thus the force of the hammer is accentuated just a bit more. So in the end, we approach this one from an unusual angle, a single text line versus the title, and yet that was clearly the shortest line between our intended meaning and the reader's understanding. So it was an easy choice, really, in the end. We had a simple point to make, and we hammered it, figuratively. And that, my friends, is the story behind this illustration. As always, we love it when people buy the book, when they recommend the book, when they praise the book online. I and my Throughline colleagues, we feel very passionate about this work. Please consider subscribing to my Substack newsletter. And see you next time, next illustration.